What's up, y'all? Winnie here, and today we're going to be checking out the Orator's staff, which I'm going to say safe because it's a staff and so probably won't do nothing if you don't have it. Hey! SCP-1430 is to be stored in a secure code-locked container. Sustained exposure to it for longer than 4 consecutive hours is forbidden except for experimental purposes. Additionally, any personnel above a level 1 security clearance are expressly forbidden from making direct contact with the object of any kind. It used to say, as of some point in 2009, only disposable dudes should be used for experimentation. Now it says, as of 2010, per directive by Site Command, experimentation is to be discontinued indefinitely. Description: SCP-1430 is a staff card from the wood of a Douglas fir tree, measuring nearly exactly 115.57 centimeters from end to end, and weighing 3.2 kilograms. Adorning the top of the staff is the seal of the University of Somewhere, the original location of the object's retrieval. The figures of an adult man and woman breaking away from chains and holding a lit torch, respectively. When 1430 is held by a subject, they report being filled with a compulsion to speak on an academic subject they are well educated in. If the subject lacks in a formal secondary or higher education, they will instead feel compelled to speak on a subject that they personally believe themselves to be knowledgeable on. Virtually all subjects were compelled to speak after 10 minutes of continuous exposure, and once a subject has begun speaking, they will continue to do so regardless of bodily requirements, ignoring hunger, dehydration, etc. This effect extends to any and all subjects who hold SCP-1430. After approximately 1.5 hours of continuous speaking, the subject's dialogue will slowly drift away from their original topic and relate towards Methodist Christianity, regardless of the subject's knowledge of the religion. Eventually, the subject will speak only on the topic of Methodism, specifically the teachings of one Reverend Dr. Blank of the University of Blank, where the object was originally recovered. At this point, though they may actively resist separation, it is safe to remove 1430 from the subject. After 4 to 5 hours of uninterrupted exposure, the subject will cease speaking on topics pertaining to Methodist Christianity, and instead lapse into describing a previously undocumented religion featuring violent sacrificial rites and practices. At this point, separating 1430 from the subject will cause permanent psychological and neurological damage. Show test log. How many tests we got here? That's a lot of tests. Subject, Dr. Blank. 20 minutes. Results: Doctor gave a brief explanation of primary neurology and meme theory, the subject of her graduate thesis while attending university. Released 1430 willingly on the request of researchers, though commented that she wished she felt that confidence 7 years ago. Test 2, Dr. Y. 45 minutes. Subject spent the duration describing his tenure at the SCP Foundation and how he acquired it, including details on his studies of SCP blank 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 and blank. At the 45-minute mark, when asked by researchers to set down 1430, subject initially resisted, claiming he hadn't even gotten to how he redacted, but relinquished after repeated verbal commands. Afterwards, subject expressed considerable distress at having openly and freely discussed classified materials. Tapes were destroyed, and individuals below the required security clearance who viewed the experiment were administered Class A amnestics. Dr. Y was not reprimanded. Test 5, Agent H. 2 hours and 47 minutes. Additional info. Agent H was introduced into the SCP Foundation through non-standard channels. Because of his upbringing, he never received formal education beyond the age of 9. Results: Agent H spoke at length of his knowledge of combat exercises and training, as well as his experiments surviving in extremely adverse wartime conditions. After an hour and 42 minutes, subject touched on his knowledge of the Methodist Church, how it related to his survival, and recommended it to the observing researchers. By 2.5 hours, Methodism was the only topic of the subject's speech. When asked to set the object back down, remained unresponsive and continued speaking even after subject several repeated direct orders. Security team instructed to forcibly remove the subject from the test chamber. Subject actively and violently resisted having the object removed from his grip and continued to speak despite fighting a group of 4 men. As soon as subject ceased contact with the object, as a result of being struck on the wrist, he expressed considerable confusion at his situation, claiming to not remember the previous altercation. Agent H later revealed that he had no relationship with the Methodist Church and was in fact raised strictly Russian Orthodox. Test 9, Disposable 25102 for an hour. Additional info: they are completely mute as a result of having his tongue and vocal cords surgically removed 11 years ago to prevent the spread of oral cancer. Results: does not attempt to use sign language, his preferred language, as is expected, but instead begins mouthing words with his lips and flexing what remained of the muscles in his mouth and larynx. Subject was allowed to continue for an hour before being ordered to stop. Subject expressed great agitation after releasing 1430, claiming to have been able to hear his own voice again, and that he had spoken about the dangers of cigarette smoking for the duration. Several volunteers capable of lip reading were able to corroborate subject's claims. Okay. Test 13. Disposable 12405. 5 hours. Experiment proceeded normally for the first several hours. Subjects spoke. Well, several would be 4. Subjects first spoke of setting up and executing pyramid schemes before mentioning a successful email scam performed on a reverend of the Methodist faith after 1 hour 32 minutes of speech. So, note, subject's file indicates charges for a scam nearly identical to the one described, though the victim was not a reverend nor a follower of any Christian doctrine at all. After 3 hours, the subject is speaking entirely on the topic of Methodism, specifically referring any listeners to the deceased Reverend Dr. Blank for further guidance. After 3 hours and 47 minutes, subject's narrative takes an unexpected turn, no longer instructing listeners to seek guidance, but rather insisting on self-mutilation and other violent punishments for increasingly mundane actions, differing greatly from Methodist doctrine. After 4 hours, 23 minutes, the religious acts described by the subject no longer resemble any known existing or former religions, including elaborate human sacrifices taking place in temples carved from data expunged. When a security team was instructed to enter the testing chamber and remove 1430, subject remained initially unresponsive until physical contact was made, at which point she immediately became enraged, violently resisting attempts to remove 1430 from her possession. After being forced to drop the artifact, subject collapsed into unconsciousness and was taken to Medical Suite 28N, currently in a vegetative state showing brain activity consistent with a stroke victim. Test on 13742 was held for, looks like, at least 100 days. Additional info. They were attached to an IV drip that allowed him to remain hydrated and fed for the duration of the experiment. Results. Experiment proceeded as expected for the first several hours. Subject spoke at length about his knowledge of hot wiring luxury cars before lapsing into the expected pattern of Methodist teachings and the unknown religion described by previous subjects. After 10 to 11 hours of continuous exposure, the subject's vocal cords begin to clearly indicate stress and the subject's voice grows more difficult to comprehend. Similarly, subject's lips and mouth are beginning to show signs of minor cuts and other damage suspected to be from accidental bites. At this point, subject is believed to be describing the daily rituals of the followers of the unknown religion. After 23 hours of continuous exposure, it is effectively impossible to understand. Subject's voice had given out entirely and lip reading is rendered virtually useless due to the damage to the subject's mouth and lips. Posture indicates heavy reliance on 1430 to remain upright. Subject occasionally coughs and spits blood. After blank hours of continuous exposure, subject is showing signs of near total exhaustion and close to losing consciousness. Then, at exactly blank hours, blank minutes, and blank seconds, subject immediately stands at attention, indicating none of the fatigue present mere seconds earlier, and speaks clearly and loudly in an unknown language despite the obvious damage to the subject's mouth and throat. Subject's voice is audible outside the testing chamber, rated as soundproof to 180 decibels. Security team is instructed to enter the testing chamber and open fire on the subject. Data expunged, containment procedures engaged, data expunged, 37 minutes later using coordinated use of high explosives. Other than a layer of explosive residue, 1430 remains undamaged. Subject is obviously terminated. Following the incidents of test 17, testing has been halted. Okay, recover document A. Let's see. Recover from the office of blank blank during the retrieval. When was the mace obtained? 19-something. Did your institution have an academic mace before the present one? No. Was the mace a gift of a person or group? Yes. If so, who? Board of blank. Who designed and executed the mace? Blank blank, financial vice president designed mace. Local woodcarver produced mace from blank. Do you have any idea of the original cost of the mace? Looks like a lot of money. Do the particular materials used in your mace have any particular historic significance? No. Any comments about the symbolism of design emblems on the mace would be helpful. University seal carved on one side of mace top, other has carved male figure busting bonds of ignorance and blank. No other symbols. What is the size and weight of your mace? 45.5 inches long, blank pounds. Looks like thousands of pounds. Does your institution have a tradition about who is the mace bearer in your academic profession? All that's crossed out, never used again, presently stored in the library archives. Is the mace displayed in a lobby, foyer, library, etc. during the year? It has never been displayed. Source May 15th, 19-something as recorded by blank blank. I'm not sure what that says. Something ever, if we're still love and I'm something yourself. I'm not sure what that says. But that's going to do it for this entry. What was it called again? Orator Stick? Orator Staff. Um, if you liked it, a like and a subscribe will be groovy. If you want to click the bell, you can do that as well so that you're notified of future uploads. And I will see y'all in the next one. Later.